Hey guys, it's Brian Hilliard here, author of the best-selling book, Networking Like a Pro, and I am fired up because we have ourselves a little treat here today. We've got Kristin Louise Heneghan, who is coming to us from the Great North up in Canada, which is awesome. Kristin is a coach and does a lot of things in terms of social media and things like that, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy that. Kristin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. It's a true honor to be here.
Awesome. I am looking forward to this. So, one of the things that we had talked about when we first kind of got together and chatted a little bit on LinkedIn was how you were talking about this idea of a hub site. Okay, so we were talking a little bit, just to kind of give the audience a little bit of a background. We were talking in the context of getting your name out there, getting the word out there, being successful online, building a brand, doing some of these different things. Okay, now you brought up this notion of a hub site. Talk to us a little bit because, is that a blog? Is that a website? Do I need to build something else? Talk to us what that is exactly and how you feel that helps.
So how I look at a hub site is it's the front page of your brand where it houses all of your assets, whatever it is you're housing. If you're an author, you might be housing different materials that you have that support your writings. If you're like I am in network marketing, then you may have your blog in there where it shares a little bit about you and your experience with the product or service that you offer. But really, it's just a spot that is branded to you and not necessarily to an outside entity. And I see this a lot in network marketing because we usually will get this idea that we are the company we're partnered with rather than really just owning who we are, because we're going to attract people to us before we're going to attract people to anything outside of that. That's the glue that pulls us in. So in the hub site, for me, I have my blog in there. I have some great little assets that help people with the products that I have. But then also if I look at, my brother-in-law, who's an author, he has his hub site where he has his blog and his podcast that support his book and really round out his brand. So it gives them a spot to come to get to know, like, and trust you is really what it's about.
And it's definitely, as I understand it, it's definitely I was kind of making fun as the website is a blog, but it's really a little bit of both, isn't it? It can be something where, and you correct me on this if I'm wrong, but it can be something where as a coach, we've got, coaches and consultants, some authors, you've mentioned that point. It can be something where the individual has their assets. So like, for example, you know what? I don't want to put you on the spot, but give you a chance to think about it. What would some of the pages look like? Maybe that would be a good, because people think, so it's obviously a home page, right? What are some other things? Because what happens is people, when they start thinking about, building out something, they kind of start thinking, oh my gosh, I got to contract this person, I got to work. But you're not saying that. So give us a rundown of what a hub site would look like in terms of some of the, the do's and not do's and don'ts, but in terms of the layout a little bit, if you don't mind.
Some of the things that are in there. I mean, one of the big things on the hub site is you want to have about you. Front and center. I found many websites where the about you is kind of hidden, and really that's what people want to know, right? They want to know who you are. So having that front and center, I think, is a big thing to push forward. And then from there you can have, maybe you have an asset. So if you're let's say you're a coach on helping people increase their positivity in their mind. Maybe you have a little document or a PDF, a giveaway that you can have for them there on, here are 10 steps to help you increase your positivity and your, reducing your negative self-talks, things like that. But really, I think for the layout, if you can have you front and center and let people get to know you first before offering your services or product, that's going to create such a better affinity, and people are going to stick to you. And they'll be able to find out right away, this is somebody that I want to work with. And then also having those little giveaways in there as well on the front page of, something that they can get value from quickly so that they can start seeing results quickly. And then they'll keep coming back to you for that good info.
So we have a home page, we have an about us, maybe a little contact us action?
Definitely contact us. Some way that they can get in touch with you. And I like having a couple different ways because not everybody emails. Okay. Not everybody likes to phone.
Okay.
We know. But if you have a couple different ways where they can phone, they can text, or maybe they can reach you on one of your social media outlets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, totally fine. You know, it's funny you talk about phone. I was on the phone bank last night actually for our election here in the United States, as you know, coming up.
Coming up
Okay,
quick.
and I was taking care of business so we can handle this business that we're currently dealing with, and I was phone banking. And you know, it's interesting. Everyone doesn't like to pick up the phone. I was surprised. I was on the call. I was on there for like a half hour. I got two people who picked up, one who hung up on me, and the other, which is fine. And the other, like my deal was like, I'm not going to try to convince them to try to what I think is the right decision, which is the obvious right decision, in my opinion. But I was just going to go with the idea of just, all right, let's just get the vote out. And so I got one person who I was, you know, who hung up. The other person who's like, yeah, I've actually already gone out and voted. That's great for me. I love that because the numbers show the more people we have voting, the better we're going to get. So, you know, it's really interesting. But I was like, when I was done with my phone banking, I was like, boy, people don't answer the phone anymore. Like no one, and that you just reminded me of that. No, people, you can't just put on your site a phone number and expect like that's going to be okay. And the same thing is with your email. Okay, so we're creating this hub site. We're having it with a blog, with some of these other components and things like that. How do you feel about video and maybe even some social proof?
Critical pieces. Critical pieces. I think in my experience with what I've helped people to curate on their hub sites is multi, what's the word I'm looking for?
Maybe faceted or medium.
Thank you. Medium. Yeah. That's the word. Multi-medium. So if you can have, you know, your written stuff, have some video in there, definitely social proof is key. Okay. One thing that I found to be quite successful for many people is when they create a Facebook community, which is a group, where they can have people in there and they can offer value, but also it gives social proof because they can share testimonials in there. Right. People can kind of sniff around the edges without feeling pressured or threatened. Right. And so all of them definitely do meld in together.
Okay. Okay. And then for me personally, and I'll see, and I think you're going to agree with this, but I'll ask you, I always talk about having your Facebook group actually as a tab from your hub site. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, good. Then let's talk about something else and I wrote this down because I liked it. And it kind of is, you know, when when the internet first came out, there was this discussion around this and it got away from it, but you brought it back up again and I love it. Stickiness and affinity. And I think, you know, for people that can mean different things, unpack that a little bit if you don't mind so that we can get a feel for what it is you're saying. Yeah, because I think personally that's a good point. But unpack what you mean by that in our context, if you don't mind.
So when I talk about stickiness and affinity, one of the things that I find I've seen this with authors, I've seen this with coaches, I've seen it in the network marketing side of things, is they kind of shy away from sharing a little bit about their personal life and what they've gone through.
Right.
And those are the stories that are going to create that affinity with your potential audience, whatever your audience might be. Because then they can see that, man, this is a real person. This is somebody that has gone through similar things to me. Right. I can definitely relate to them. And so with that, I've always found it very important. I mean, it's not like you're airing out all the dirty laundry by any means. Right. We don't want to go, we don't want to go that crazy. Right. But we do want to be okay with being a little bit more vulnerable in sharing what we're going through, what we're learning, some of the stumbling blocks we've gone through, because then it puts a bit of humanity into you, which is what we want. And people can relate to others who are struggling with the same things. So when it comes to creating that stickiness or that affinity, that's where really sharing yourself and developing you as a person is such a critical piece, whatever it is you're doing, whether you're a coach, whether you're an author, whether you're in network marketing, it's all relevant in helping to establish you as a brand and who you are.
I love that because I'm so glad we brought this up because affinity, you know, people, coaches and authors and people of different ilk, they get into it, for different reasons. And one of the things, I struggled with certain things this actually was one of them a little bit, when I first got started, and even several years afterwards, I felt, and I'm sure others who are listening, I don't want to speak for them, but I certainly felt this. And it was this idea that, well, I'm a coach and therefore I have to be, there's this idea that you have to be, my girlfriend watches The Boys on Amazon. I have not watched it yet. I might do that this weekend.
Neither have I, but it looks good.
Yeah, it does. It looks like we should be watching it. The idea is that, there's these coaches and consultants, I guess, who think that they need to be like the business equivalent to Thor, okay, or like Aquaman. And it's like, that's not the case. You know what I mean? What people are looking for is they're looking for an opportunity to be able to know that you know something that they don't, obviously, okay? But when you're talking about affinity, what you're really talking about is, I loved it, you said relatability, and what I actually thought of is connectivity. Okay. Yes. And you can take connectivity and swap that out with stickiness too, by the way. And what happens is you get a situation where it is more connected with that relationship. And what I tell people is this, and I don't know how you feel about this, I'll throw it out at you. I do like to, so I have a Facebook group, and, I'll do like whatever. And I will do regular posts about regular stuff, just video value add posts. And then I've picked like 2 or 3 things that I will post about. Not that, like, just to have something, so I have some structure. So I will, my girlfriend and I, we're not vegan. She is probably 90% vegan. We do go more of a plant-based diet. So I probably say 80 to 85% of my meals are plant-based. Hers are like 90 to 95. So she's a deviation ahead of me, which is fine. And what I'll do though, is I will post some of the pictures, like we had, I don't know, some type of something. I'll post that. Oh, hey, good little, something about me. I'll post, what else did I post about? Oh, movies. So I watch a lot of movies, and I watch, she said, actually, sidebar. One of the things when we first got together, she's like, I don't think I've ever watched any more movies with anybody in my entire life than I have with you. And what I told her, I said, well, I don't know what to tell you on that, but I am I'm probably the most movie watching, television watching person who's still gainfully employed and has potential, right? Like whatever the threshold is, I'm not quite there, but I'm definitely like on that
Close.
while still staying a viable partner. Okay. So it's like,
oh, that's good.
You know what I mean? So being able to do that. But so I share about movies, I share about sports, I share about, I've even shared a little bit, I wouldn't recommend this, but I do it. Listen, with the elections and stuff going on, I share a little bit about that because this is a serious situation down here. So there's certain things that you can share about. How do you feel like if someone's trying to figure out what should they share, what's inbounds, what's out of bounds, maybe you don't want to talk about your therapist appointment, which actually I don't necessarily have a problem with. I have seen a therapist on multiple occasions. I think it's great. But maybe I'm not, voice to texting the notes from the last session. I can understand that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say is a viable, like how would you go about if someone's like, boy, okay, I'll give it a try. Give us a feel for how you would go about that, inbounds, out of bounds, that kind of stuff.
Well, when it comes to inbounds, a lot of it has to do with what you're comfortable and what your viewers or your audience is going to respond to.
Right.
I like you. I think if you're going to therapy, I don't think it's a bad idea to share a little bit about what you're learning.
Right.
But like you said, you don't want to take the notes verbatim and say, hey, this is what we talked about.
Right,
today,
right. Turns out I'm going to kill my mom next week, but we avoided that.
Exactly. So I think it's good to talk about the things that you're doing just from a little bit of a higher level. Another thing that I really enjoy sharing is what I'm learning as I go on my personal development journey. So one of the things, I finally, after 10 attempts, have finally finished reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Good job with that. Yeah, that's not the easiest book to read. It's the old school. It's the language.
Got that old languaging. It's hard to follow. here's
It
the
feels
trick.
like it almost feels like the NIV of the Bible. It's like
Yes.
you know what I mean? It's like the
It's like a whole different language, and how everything, the word structure and the sentence structure is, it can
yeah.
be very challenging to follow. And the trick I did was I actually downloaded the audiobook. It was actually an adaptation by Jamie McIntyre,
Okay.
and I read and listened at the same time so I could be involved with both of my senses, and
That's interesting.
got her done.
Okay, good job. Good job.
But it was really neat because at the end, he goes through the 6 ghosts of fear. And so I was looking at them like, well, I know which one mine is. Mine is the fear of criticism. And so what I did is I went digging on how can you deal with that? And I learned quite a bit. So I did a podcast based on that. And I just read through my findings and what I've experienced. So sharing what you're learning, something that you're reading, a big aha moment. Movies are great because I think most people enjoy movies. I know I'm a big movie fan too. You will always catch me quoting movies at any inappropriate time.
Right.
So sharing those things about who you are so critical. And when it comes to inbounds and out of bounds, you have to use your discernment. Some people can share a little bit more in depth. Others don't. And so it's really a matter of personal comfort. But like I said, it's not that you want to air out all your dirty laundry. Let's put this into a context, because I've seen a lot of people going through this with the pandemic, a lot of separations happening. You can talk
Oh, the
about what
marriage.
the marriage
Yeah.
separations, relationships falling apart. And I've seen 2 ways of approaching it. One, where they air everything, all the dirty, all the nitty gritty. Gets a little exhausting sometimes. And others where they're talking about it, not necessarily airing all the dirty laundry, but just sharing the process of it and what they're learning as they're coming through it. So there's the 2 different things. You don't want to be bashing your partner or ex-partner, but maybe you're starting to come to some realizations as you're going through it. And sharing those experiences is great because there's other people going through it who may not know what to do. And I've always been a firm believer in the best service to humanity that you can do is to share your story, because
Right.
there's somebody else who's going through it, and maybe they haven't found the right tools. Maybe they haven't found somebody who they've been able to connect with and be like, man, I'm going through that. This is how they're doing it. Let's give it a shot, right? And it can give somebody hope. So so that's my take on what to share, what you're learning, what you're up to, what projects you're working on.
Right.
Those are all great things to share.
Right. No, that's really good. And you're right. A lot of people are having challenge and stuff with this. And I was saying that, I can't think outside of my brother, I can't think of a person I'd rather spend more time with than my girlfriend. And I think that what happens though is a lot of people they don't realize that certainly people who are married, and if it's been several years, you can find yourself in a situation where a lot of people have spent more time with their spouse in the last 8 months than they have in the last 8 years.
Yes.
And it's like, it's like, what? They eat chicken? I had no idea that they didn't like chicken. I thought they liked it the whole time. No, actually I haven't. It's just, I haven't said anything type of thing. You know what I mean? So I think that that's some really good points. I like that point about the sharing and things like that. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the idea of, we're talking about social media in particular here. And let's talk about something that comes up a lot, which is frequency of posts. Okay. I think a lot of people, for some reason, they want to have this conversation about, well, either I don't post at all or I post 50 times a minute.
And there's nothing in between.
Yeah. And I'm trying to explain to people, and I'll certainly hear your take. I'd love to hear, but I try to explain to people that posting is not like a faucet. It's not something where it's either on or it's off. Okay, a lot of people, they say the same thing about speaking. I work with people about getting paid speaking engagements, and there's this narrative that says either I am not getting paid to speak at all, no speaking engagements for me, or I'm on the road 225 nights a year with the platinum, gold, titanium package from the Marriott. And it's like, no, there's perfectly good things right there in the middle.
In the sweet spot,
Yes. Yeah, so give us your take on posting and frequency. We've talked about the what. Let's talk about the how often, if you don't mind, what your take is on that.
This is such a great conversation because it is kind of like your all or nothing mentality around it. But really what it comes down to is consistency, whatever that consistency looks like for you. I mean, for me to post 3 times a day, I can't keep up with that. And I know that.
Right.
I'd be exhausted. I'd be trying to, scrape for content. And so I can't do that. So if I can post once a day of something super, super solid,
right.
that's a win. That's a big, big win. And if I can keep that going consistently, awesome. If it turns out that maybe you can't, it's not in your bandwidth at the moment to post every day, then once a week, but do it consistently. Maybe it's twice a week, but you're doing it consistently. There are sweet spots and you have to find what's good for you. And then if it gets really crazy, and this is the other thing about social media is you don't have to be on all the places.
Nope.
Right? If you're not a Twitter fan, don't do Twitter. If you don't like Instagram, don't do it because you're not going to put your heart and soul into it.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly right.
Start with one that you're good at, or start with one that you like, get good at it, and then you can layer things on.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and I know you understand this wholeheartedly, Brian, because of how I see you work on LinkedIn. And it's when you can get good at one, then you can layer on the other and layer on as you get consistent and competent, and you can feel that there's a good flow. And if it turns out that you need to, eventually have someone help you with that, great. There's awesome scheduling tools you can use. So you can have content scheduled for a week in advance.
Right.
So it's just a matter of finding your consistency time. If it's once a day, awesome. If it's once a week, awesome. Just do it consistently. And that's the key.
Gotcha. Because, I think a lot of times people, when they think about this, we've alluded to this, they think it's all or nothing. And really the conversation is what you've just said. It's about consistency. Mm-hmm. And what people are looking for is an expectation, right? They want to be able to say, all right, well, I can expect, or I see, or he's out there, So I use a scheduling tool called Smarter Q, which I would recommend for anybody. It's $19 a month. Smarter Q, they spelled it the British way, QUE. Or I think that's British.
That's very British, and that's how we do it up here because we follow.
Really?
We still put U's in color.
I did not know that. All right, that's fine. I just didn't know that. So it's the QUE. It's the QUE and Smarter Q. And it really helps you be able to get out there on a regular basis. You put your content in, out it goes, and you're on the move. And I think a lot of times people, their 2 biggest things, well, there are 3 biggest things, which obviously I believe we've talked about today. Number 1 is they don't have a place to put everything or to point people. That's the hub point that we started off with.
Yes.
Number 2, they struggle with, well, what is it that I should talk about? And I want to keep it like this. And you're like, no, and I agree with you. It's like, no, we need to be focused on getting people to know you, the stickiness, the affinity. Okay, and then 3 is, all right, well, listen, fine. I agree with all the stuff, or maybe I don't, but I'll do it anyway. But how often should I, go? If I'm not doing it 28 times a minute, then that must be a problem. No, it's not. You can absolutely have, some scheduled software. You can have some automated stuff going out. And the whole thing is just being able to create an awareness. And in a perfect world, it's being able to create an awareness of, to your point, your brand. Which brings me to my last question and kind of the last segment, if you will, of our discussion here today, branding. So a lot of times people are like, oh, well, you know what? I need to brand more. I need to get this out there. The podcast is called How to Brand and Grow Your Coaching Practice.
Yes.
Talk to us about what an online brand, in your opinion, what are we talking about exactly? Because I hear people kind of kick it around. I kick it around. An online brand, you see Ivanka Trump is all she can talk about is her brand. We know it can't be that. So what is it that an online brand actually is?
And this is such a fun conversation. I love this part because most of the time, and this is including me, I thought this way too, is that we think our brand Is the beautiful color palette, is the
Right.
logo, right?
Right.
Is the graphics.
Right.
No, that's not your brand. That's
Right.
just the beautiful, aesthetically pleasing things. Your
Mm-hmm.
brand is actually how people think of you.
Mm-hmm.
So when they think of doing business with you, what's the first thing that comes to their mind? Is it something
Mm-hmm.
of excitement, or are they like, I don't want to talk to that person? That's your brand. It really comes down to, how do people see you? How do you present yourself? How do you do business? And how do you operate? So I have a really good friend down in Iowa. He's very successful in the network marketing side of things. And one of his things is he is one of those people that has been able to utilize the political climate and use that as part of his brand. And he does it in a very, very intelligent way. Not everybody does. Sometimes it can get really messy, but he does it in a way where it draws conversation. It's not blame, shame, and criticism. So that's part of his brand, right? And he's going to attract those type of people. And so if you have, and that's really what it is. It's, how do you operate? How do you present yourself? That is the key part of your brand. So really getting clear on, who are you now? And is that who you want to portray? Is
Right.
that who you want to be? And if
Right.
it's not, what are some steps you can do to start operating in a way that would be in line with the brand you want to create? And
Yeah.
then the logo and the color palette will all come.
I read a book Tom Antion a while back. It was called How to Sell a Ton in the Back of the Room. And it was talking about speaking and stuff like that. He made several good points, but one that I've always, there's actually two that I always remember. This is one of them. He said, there's different types of speakers, and you have to figure out which one you want to be. I'm like, okay. He says, you have the people who are the speakers, like the gurus, the from high, and they're speaking.
Like the
And
voice of
then,
God.
right. There's like Old Testament God, not New Testament, but Old
Yes.
Testament. And it's like, oh, okay. And it's coming down. And he says, that's fine. He says, then, and you can call them the gurus, the experts, whatever the case may be. He says, then you have the people who are kind of like, talkative and engaging, and I don't even really know how I got here kind of thing. And they're just like, okay, whatever. And that's also fine. He says, but what you got to do, this is a continuum. What you got to do is you got to figure out where you want to be. And the term that he used that I liked is this, because he had like 3 or 4 terms. I'm just not remembering them all. It's the idea of what he called an accessible expert. And I was like, isn't that interesting? So he says, yes, what that is, it's a hybrid, it turns out, where you're talking to people and, you're having a good time, but, you do know what you're talking about. Otherwise, why would you be there? You're talking to people, they're having a good time, everybody's happy. But then afterwards, you're talking them, like after the presentation. You ever see some speakers, they pop off the stage when they're done, and it's like they're double parked at the airport?
Yes,
Like,
they run.
you know what I'm talking about. This
Exactly
person
what you're
seems
talking about.
great, seems nice, seems really fun. You're willing to stand in line. You actually go up to the front of the room. There are people in front of you. You are queuing with the UE in line, ready to go, okay? And it's like he's double parked. And Tom's like, not recommended. So I've come with this idea of, you're talking about your brand. My opinion, I'll certainly hear what you have to say. I'd love to hear it. Accessible expert. It's someone who is, I think of a brand as a result of your marketing efforts. People use branding as a verb. I disagree. I think it's a noun, and I think it's a destination. And I think that you get to your brand when you've marketed yourself in a way that's in line with your message, preferably. And the way I like to think of a brand is something like that is warm and inviting.
Yes. Yes. I wholeheartedly agree. Because the thing is people, again, it comes back to the connection, right?
Good point again.
Comes back to the connection. If you can make yourself available, one of my favorite people to listen to and watch is actually Mel Robbins, because she does this so well. You always see conversations that she's having with people after the event.
Right.
She takes time for her fans
Right.
to ask questions and get to know
Right.
her and give advice.
Right.
And so that's, yes, that is exactly the way that I find the best way to do it. Is definitely, you do want to know what you're talking about and have that confidence that you do, but at the same time, we're all humans. And so if you can get on the same plane as people and just be a human with them, give them time, give them the attention, you're going to create that really strong affinity, and people are going to love to be with you and hear what you have to say.
So speaking of which, I was at, this was a while back, one of my very first, not very first, but one of my earlier presentations. It was a group of like 200 people, which at the time was a large, still is a large. If you give me 200 people, I'll still take it, just so anybody wants to know, I'll take that. But at the time, that was like unfathomable number of people, okay? And I remember I was on stage and I was fired up. I'm playing my game, people are laughing. When people laugh, I start telling more jokes. I get, more shots go up. And then we were done, everybody's clapping. So I have a tendency, especially if I'm fired up and if it's on stage, I kind of do this like, I actually jumped off the stage. I jumped off the stage and it's higher than you think, by the way. You think it's maybe
it's
like
quite the drop.
No, it's a big drop. I jumped off the stage in this kind of like this like Batman kind of thing, right? Because it was far. I had to get myself organized. And then I'm going out, and this is the idea of connecting with your audience. It's a little bit funny story, but it's the truth, which is I'm walking back to the thing and everyone's clapping. Somebody put their hand out. A guy, I remember this, he puts his hand out like for a high five. I'm fired up. I go like that. Like, I mean, I really high five. I go like you see in football, like boom. And then another guy, at this time, now I'm jogging back like Larry Bird in the old Boston Garden. Guy puts his hand up. I'm high-fiving. People start putting his hand up. The thing ends, 10 seconds. I'm going like this down the side, okay? It's like the thing. And I tell people, I said, listen, when you're doing when in my own mind, that's what you're looking for. That's a connection with your audience or whomever. And then from there, having it where they feel like you know what you're talking about. And then you go and you're talking to people. And I think that a lot of coaches and authors, actually specifically authors, we have a tendency to try to hide behind the book.
Yes.
No, they want to know what you did. When did you think of this? How did it come across? When did you I tell people my first book, Networking Like a Pro, I didn't really want to write it. I didn't get blackmailed into it because that's a federal offense. but I definitely was in that conversation. You're like, listen, the guy said, if you don't finish your book, you're not going to speak until you finish your book. If you want to come speak, then you need to finish the book. Okay, I finished the book. It was only because I wanted to go to the conference. It wasn't necessarily because I thought writing a book was a good idea. So the point is, people like to hear that story, and people like to, and your point about the behind the scenes and stuff like that, absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. Well, this was a really, really good conversation. I'm so glad we were able to carve out some time to do this. Tell folks, I know you're on LinkedIn, maybe where they can find you, and just to give them a feel for where you are.
Absolutely. So I'm actually on a few different social sites. My top 3 are LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Okay.
And that is about it, because I don't like the other ones.
Okay.
If you don't like them, don't do them.
That's right.
So you can actually find me on LinkedIn. Just search Kristin Louise Heneghan, and my last name is spelled Heneghan.
Okay.
You can find me on Instagram at I am Kristin Louise.
Okay.
And then on Facebook, same thing, Kristin Louise Heneghan, and I will be there.
Awesome. Well, this was a pleasure. I'm so glad we got a chance, like I said, to talk. It was really good to kind of some of the stuff people maybe know, some of it they had a different take on. I think whenever I try to have a social conversation, I try to come from an angle where it's like, listen, it's kind of like cleaning out the basement, not the basement, but like the living room. It's not the basement, but the living room, where it's like, let's kind of clean some of this out. Some of it we need, some of it we don't maybe, some of it we thought we did, but we really don't. Really, really, really good stuff. I love the stuff about the hub. I love the stuff about the hub, you know, and the affinity and the stickiness and all of that good stuff. Kristin, it was awesome. So my name is Brian Hilliard. That is Kristin Louise Heneghan, and we really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on, Kristin. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was an absolute honor.